What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, Ilia Topuria put on a clinic performance against Josh Emmett, even rendering a 50-42 scorecard. He looked deeply impressive top to bottom, but my question to you is, do you think he did enough in that performance to make you believe that he could potentially knock off a Volkanovski or a Max Holloway, or do we need to see a little more?
Well, it was a very impressive performance, and I think he showed us that he absolutely belongs in the conversation with those guys you just named. But I don't know if he did enough to earn a title shot off that one. Now, when you're going in there with somebody like Josh Emmett, who's durable, been there, done that, seen it all, it's very hard to get them out of there. And, you know, we're talking about 45ers. They're very strong, very powerful guys, and both of these guys hit hard. But it is harder to finish when you get to the top echelon of any division, regardless of the size of these guys. And I thought that although Josh Emmett looked like he was a step behind from the very first second of the fight, Ilia Topuria had a few opportunities where I thought he might have been able to finish if he would have pushed on the gas just a little bit harder. But, you know, he did want to protect himself because Josh Emmett gets very dangerous when you put him in a corner or you really compromise him, you know, from time to time. So I thought Ilia looked good, but I don't know if that's the performance that he needed to get into that next echelon and get into an immediate title shot.
Right, and you know, it is worth noting that we're being critical of the performance, not because it wasn't an excellent performance, but because he said in the post-fight interview, or the post-fight press conference rather, that performance was enough to earn me a title shot. I'm going to sit back and now wait for it. You know, so now we have to look at it through a different lens. Was that lens impressive enough to move him immediately into a title shot when he's really not been competing against upper echelon competition for all that long? Josh Emmett being the first top 5 guy that he's really gotten in there and thrown down with. So, you know, and also you have to add to that as well that Alexander Volkanovski is arguably the best champ in the entire sport. So you're talking about going in there with the guy who's some believe is the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the UFC. Then you have Max Holloway, which it's crazy to call him a gatekeeper, but Max Holloway has been doing some gatekeeping for Volkanovski of late. He's kind of like the Robert Whittaker of 145, but in my opinion, even better than Robert. And I think he is even closer to Volk than Robert is to Izzy in a lot of ways. So, you know, that being said, and then you have other people like Arnold Allen coming up, who, yes, he did fall short to Max Holloway, but if Max is going to move up a division after he fights Zombie, maybe Arnold Allen gets in there, gets a finish, and his name's on the tip of the matchmaker's tongue. It's never a good thing to say, you know what, I've done enough, I'm going to rest on my laurels, I'm going to pull my oars out of the water, and I'm going to wait for the matchmakers to put me in there for a title. At 26 years old, he's still got a lot of developing to do. He's in a really, really good position to be that good, that young, but I think he needs to get a little more experience, 1 or 2 more fights, and then he's ready for that title shot.
Yeah, you can't wait around in this sport. The sport waits for no one, and constantly the landscape of these divisions is changing, and you never know who's going to pop in or pop out or what fights get made. You know, Volk did just move up to 55, you know, momentarily, which put the division on hold. And then we've also got talks from Aljamain Sterling saying this is his last fight at 135, and then he's moving up to 45. And with what he's done recently at 135 as the champion, you'd have to believe that if he wins this fight, or if he loses really, but more particularly if he wins this fight against Sugar Sean O'Malley, he's moving right up to 45 and not going to have to do any heavy lifting to get a title fight. I could see them making a major fight between Volkanovski and Aljamain Sterling right when Aljamain moves into the division. So then you start to worry about people like Ilia Topuria who say, I'm not doing anything else. I've done enough heavy lifting. I'm going to wait for my title shot. Because if Aljo moves in and then he has a war with Volkanovski, then that could start a rematch or a trilogy or some sort of situation that really sidelines Ilia Topuria. And this sport is all about striking when the iron's hot. But if you're red hot right now, which you just fought on the ABC card, you did really good in there against a top 5 opponent. This was sort of his coming out party, and I know he didn't get the finish, but he did join the 5-round club. He looked really good doing it, and he showed us that he has star potential. He has the skills that it requires to be a top fighter and compete against anybody in the world. But without making that signature finish and without really putting a stamp on that performance, it does leave a little bit to the imagination, and we want to see him do a little bit more heavy lifting before he gets his title shot. You know, Max Holloway said he's moving to 55 pretty soon. Volkanovski always wants that Islam rematch, and I think he's going to get that sooner than later. Plus, you've got Aljamain Sterling moving up, so Ilia Topuria, though he is real hot in the MMA world right now, he's still relatively unknown to everybody else and needs to do some heavy lifting because his strength of schedule is not where everybody else's is.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the Arnold Allen fight is perfect. If you put him in there with Arnold Allen, those are both guys that are young, hungry fighters that are super talented. And if Volkanovski is to go and have some fun with Islam and chase the BMF belt and Max is going to move on, then we're going to see a real shuffling take place at 145. And that shuffling is going to benefit the people who are active. So I think Ilia, he's got the skills. He's only 26 years old. He's got plenty of time. He doesn't need to be a champion right now. What he needs to do right now is continue to build his name, continue to gain fans, and continue, most importantly, to gain skills so that 18 to 24 months from now, he's ready for a title shot, and not only ready for a title shot, but able to win in a title fight. Because we see guys a lot of the time, they get thrust into a title fight a little bit too quickly. I'm slightly worried about that with Sugar Sean O'Malley right now. He gets thrown into a title fight with somebody like Aljamain Sterling, who's an established absolute beast. And what happens if he gets finished early? You know, how long is it going to take for him to move back up those ranks? How much momentum is he going to lose? Now, O'Malley is a potentially mega star for the UFC, so they're gonna roll the dice and take the gamble there. But somebody like Ilia Topuria, my advice would be not to rush things. Don't say I'm sitting out and getting a title shot because you might find yourself bypassed.
I couldn't agree more. And if I were in Ilia's shoes, I would be looking to add as many more highlights and knockouts to his portfolio that he possibly can on his rise to the title. So he can get in front of more fans, so he can be seen more as a lethal striker, a lethal finisher, and become undeniable. And then eventually he'll get his opportunity. But if he sits around and waits, everybody's going to forget about him.
Agreed.